Look, most people usually end up choosing one of two paths in life. Some people become so accommodating, just so relentlessly kind, that the world inevitably takes advantage of them. And then you have the others, right? The ones who become so ruthless, so entirely obsessed with winning, that they completely lose their inner peace. But what if I told you both of these paths are incomplete? What if the real secret to navigating our modern world is knowing exactly when to be Buddha and exactly when to be Machiavelli? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are decoding the ultimate architecture of personal power. It's a painful reality, isn't it? We're basically force-fed this false choice from day one. You either have to be the saint who gets exploited by everyone, or the schemer who completely sacrifices their soul to get ahead. I mean, think about it. If you walk into a high-stakes negotiation or some fierce corporate hierarchy armed with nothing but naive kindness, you are literally bringing a shield to a gunfight. But if you walk in consumed by paranoia and ruthless ambition, you just become a prisoner of your own mind. Adopting only one of these paths leaves you dangerously vulnerable. If you're entirely soft, you're prey. Make no mistake about that. But if you're entirely hard, you become brittle, and eventually the pressure will cause you to shatter. So, we are going to completely dismantle this false choice today. We're going to look at the world exactly as it is, and we're going to forge a mindset that allows you to operate with absolute ruthless strategy while still sleeping at night with the quiet conscience of a sage. So, let's build the foundation. And it starts with the way of Buddha. We're talking about the absolute mastery of your internal world. Now, the ancient texts often speak of a middle way, right? Steering clear of extreme indulgence on one hand and extreme deprivation on the other. But honestly, it's so much deeper than that. It is the profound realization that the outside world does not actually cause your suffering. Your mind's reaction to the world is what causes it. The absolute core of this internal mastery comes down to understanding a concept called dukkha. Dukkha roughly translates to suffering, or this deep underlying sense of unease. And the Buddha diagnosed that this pain comes directly from our rigid attachment to our desires, and especially to our ego. Listen, when someone throws an insult at you, the words don't physically hit you, right? What hurts is your ego. It's your desperate clinging to the idea of who you think you are. Once you recognize that illusion, you can literally just let the insult pass right through you. Now, a lot of people think Buddhist philosophy is about being passive or weak. No way. It is actually about forging an absolutely impenetrable shield. Just think about it. Complete emotional control, radical detachment. When your mind is perfectly still, you are completely free from all that unnecessary suffering. Your decisions aren't clouded by anger or fear or this desperate need for validation. A completely still mind is, without a doubt, the greatest defense mechanism you can possibly possess against a chaotic world. But here is the catch. Internal peace? That's really only half the equation. Because to survive out there, we have to master the external world. Enter Niccolo Machiavelli. He is so often misunderstood. His masterpiece, The Prince, was never meant to be a moral guide. It was a brutal, uncompromising survival manual for a world that is absolutely full of bad actors. He demands unblinking realism. It is much safer to be feared than loved. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. Machiavelli observed that love is held together by this incredibly fragile chain of obligation, and human beings, well, they will happily break that chain the second they find a better offer. Fear, on the other hand, is maintained by a dread of consequence, and that dread never fails. In a world full of predators, relying purely on your kindness is a fatal liability. Machiavelli introduced this fascinating concept called virtù. Now, don't confuse this with being virtuous in the traditional good guy sense. Not at all. Virtù is your strategic ingenuity. It's the sheer, raw adaptability you need to survive and win. He wrote that a leader has to be both a lion to overwhelm the wolves and a fox to recognize the hidden traps. You absolutely must have the claws to fight and the cunning to see straight through deception. All right, so here is the fatal mistake that I see most people making. If you decide to be pure Buddha, meaning all peace and absolutely no boundaries, you risk becoming naive prey. You don't have the claws, so your goodness isn't really a choice, it's just a biological default. But if you go the other way and become pure Machiavelli, all manipulation and zero core principles, you just become a hollow, paranoid shapeshifter. Wisdom without strategy is just weakness. But strategy without wisdom, that is absolute destruction. So what is the answer? The ultimate architecture for modern life is what we call the synthesis, the renunciant realist. This is your ability to operate with the cold, calculated ruthlessness of a prince externally, while fiercely preserving the unshakable peace of a sage internally. You aren't retreating from the world. Absolutely not. but you completely refuse to let the world corrupt you. This actually bridges so beautifully into ancient Indian philosophy. Specifically, if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, there's this profound concept of niskama karma. It means taking action without any attachment to the outcome. See, Western realism usually equates power with massive anxiety and incredibly tight control. But ancient wisdom teaches us that detachment actually perfects your power. You strategize fiercely, yes, but you are never enslaved by the fear of defeat. You pursue your interest, but you don't surrender your soul to it. So how does this actually look in practice? The mechanics are simple, but man, they are lethal. Your internal world is governed entirely by calm, Buddhist discipline. Meanwhile, your external world is navigated entirely with Machiavellian strategy. You use Machiavelli to read the room, to spot the predators, and to see exactly where the traps are hidden. But you use Buddha to keep your pulse perfectly, completely still when you finally spring that trap. Let's ground this in absolute reality. Scenario 1, you're in a meeting and someone directly insults you. The Buddha within you absolutely refuses to react emotionally. You just observe the words, realize they're only threatening an illusion of your ego, and you remain completely serene. But simultaneously, the Machiavellian within you is analyzing. Why exactly did they say that? Who else is watching right now? And then you deliver a cool, calculated response that completely neutralizes them, and your heart rate never even elevates. Okay, scenario 2. The absolute chaos of office politics. We live in an age of intense hypervisibility and these toxic corporate mobs. Now, a pure Buddhist might just ignore the mob entirely and end up marginalized. A pure Machiavellian would constantly change their face just to please everyone. But the synthesis? You maintain utter inner serenity. You refuse to let the drama into your soul. But externally, you observe the hierarchy like it's a biological system. You see the predators, you see the prey, you protect your flank, and you maneuver through the chaos. You are in the crowd, for sure, but you are never of it. Now, to pull this off, you need what's called the premeditation of treachery. It sounds intense, I know, but Machiavelli teaches us to just assume self-interest in everyone. Assume the alliance is going to break. Assume they're going to envy your success. I know it sounds paranoid at first, but when you combine it with Buddhist detachment, it's literally the only way to love people safely. If you expect self-interest, you are never shocked and you are never destroyed by it. You just smile because you saw the whole thing coming. And that brings us to one of the most insanely potent weapons in this synthesized arsenal, the power of silence. The Buddhist tradition values silence as a vital path to inner clarity and comfort with solitude. But Machiavelli, he values silence as an impenetrable cloak of unpredictability. When you don't reveal everything, when you just let your actions speak, your opponent literally cannot read you. They end up projecting their own insecurities and fears right onto your silence. You become a mirror to them. And trust me, people are terrified of mirrors. Your very presence becomes your absolute power.
Now, we have to talk about guardrails, because there are limits. As the brilliant ancient Indian strategist Kautilya warned in the Arthashastra, the king who violates dharma destroys himself, though he may conquer the earth. This is what we call ethical realism. You absolutely must know how to deceive, and you must know how to crush an enemy. But you use your immense inner discipline to choose not to do those things, unless it is absolutely necessary to preserve justice. Your power must serve dharma, the cosmic order. It must never serve your petty ego.
Ultimately, all of this leads us to one massive realization: power without possession. True strength is not about frantically hoarding control or desperately manipulating people out of a place of fear. True strength is deeply engaging with the dark, brutal realities of this world, yet remaining completely internally untouched by them. You possess the power. You just never ever let the power possess you. Look, the world doesn't need you to be some passive monk retreating from life. And it definitely doesn't need another hollow, scheming tyrant. What it needs is this: master your mind exactly like Buddha, and understand the world exactly like Machiavelli. If you can forge these two supreme disciplines together, you will walk through this life with an unshakable peace and a completely undeniable power. So the mechanics of the game are laid out right in front of you now. The question is, will you choose to remain blind and just become prey to a ruthless world? Or are you going to step up and master both the profound silence within you and the raging storm outside? The choice is entirely yours.